Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In case you're new here, my name is Kim. This is Career Union. Today I'm going to read an email from one of my clients. I believe this is going to inspire a lot of you. This is going to cover basically the topic that circumstances don't matter, and it doesn't matter what's happening in your 3D. To remain as focused and disciplined as you can in your end, and to really love yourself and cherish yourself, and not to allow the things that are happening to dictate to you whether you can be with your specific person or not. And this applies to anything you're manifesting, okay? So before I do read this, and this will be a short and sweet video, if you love me, please do like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps my channel grow, and I really do appreciate you for that. And if you want me to be your coach to help you manifest your SP back, or to change the dynamic, or anything else, email a short description to kim@coreunion.com. Go to the website, coreunion.com, book whatever you want to book, and then my scheduling assistant, Olga, will get back to you with my next available. So I'm going to go ahead and read this, and whatever comes out naturally will come out. Here's the email we discussed in our last meeting. I wanted to share everything with you so you can share it with your community to help people persist and not give up. I've had many separations with my specific person, but I always felt a deep soul connection with him. From the moment that we met, there was this undeniable feeling between us, something significant, something deeper. Early on, he would say little things here and there, and it felt like they were meant to push my buttons, to make me feel insecure. At the time, I told him that I wasn't ready to be in a committed relationship. I was still processing from a past relationship, and I didn't want to hurt anyone. After that, he started texting me, mentioning other women who were supposedly interested in him, almost like he was trying to get a reaction out of me. The first time we had an argument, we weren't even officially dating yet. But hearing about other women made me feel something strong, something that told me this connection was different. I told him, please don't share any more details about other women. I don't need to know about it. That's when he admitted he was only saying those things to test me, to see if I really cared. And this is not an uncommon thing, by the way. So eventually, we did start seeing each other, even though I kept saying I wasn't ready for the relationship. He kept pursuing me, and he was incredibly romantic and charming. One night, while we were watching a movie, he leaned in and kissed me for the first time. Things got very serious after that. At some point, I completely lost interest in my ex and decided to go all in with him. Everything just worked between us. We enjoyed all the same things, and our connection seemed effortless. But over time, I started to see a pattern that every time we got close, we would end up in an argument and separating. She didn't mention this in the email, but some of the separations were just a few days, some of them just a few hours, some of them a few weeks, okay? Some of them even a couple months. Eventually, we had one separation that lasted an entire year. And this was at the point where she reached out to me several months into this. During that time, I focused on my inner work, but deep down, I had an underlying fear. I had seen that immaturity in him, and I worried that he was being, excuse me, and I worried that he wasn't being faithful, that he was probably seeing other women while we were apart. And I reminded her, by the way, that even though she worded it this way, when we actually met, because I obviously have heard this before, that he wasn't being unfaithful to her because they weren't technically committed in the 3D. Okay, sometimes people lose that, like they're doing the inner work, and because they're doing the inner work and they're like doing the inner work from the end that they're in a committed relationship or that they're married, if they then find out that through, one of the bridges that the person ended up with someone else, they get mad, they feel betrayed, but technically you're not being betrayed because technically speaking in the 3D, you guys didn't have a committed relationship. Okay. And third parties can come in all different forms. And sometimes it is, with another person. So there was suddenly a day that I had this intense feeling that I was about to see him. And she even emailed me and she said, I have a feeling I'm going to be seeing him soon. She said it wasn't necessarily a good or bad feeling, but it was just overwhelming. And out of nowhere, he reached out and he asked me if he could stop by. When he showed up, he brought me a pair of sunglasses that he said he had found while he was organizing. He stood close to me, calling me babe, and the pull between us was stronger than ever. Then he got very serious with me and he asked if we could sit down. He told me that while we were apart, he had met somebody and he was planning to move pretty far away. We kept talking and he was very respectful. He asked if I was available for the rest of the week so we could spend time together before he left, purely platonically, and I agreed. That week was wonderful. We got closure on a lot of the problems that we had. We talked. He opened up to me in ways that he hadn't before, and he kept calling me by affectionate names. And at one point, he said, "I know you're the one." But then he followed up and he said, "I have to listen to my soul, though, and I have to follow through with these plans." Even then, I wasn't devastated. I didn't feel betrayed at this point because I could see that my inner work has been working. I had a deep knowing that we belonged together. I didn't feel the need to fight it. Instead, I encouraged him and I supported him, knowing deep down that this was very temporary. This took a lot of strength for her to do this. The day came that he packed up everything and he moved across the country, away from me. I stayed focused on myself, trusting in our love and continuing the inner work as you told me. At first, he was staying with a family member before he was supposed to move in with the third party. During that time, we continued talking. Then he told me he had changed his mind. He wasn't going to go through with moving in with her. And that's when I got caught up in the 3D. Instead of staying focused on the end, on us being together, I started obsessing now over him changing his mind and coming back right away instead of going to the new job that he had. But, excuse me, I got impatient. I started pushing, and that's when things started to fall apart again. We started fighting, and he told me he didn't feel supported. Then he said he couldn't talk to me anymore. At that point, I felt completely devastated. I started panicking, fearing that because of that argument, he might go back to the third party now. And that's exactly what ended up happening. That's when I made the decision I wasn't going to take my inner work. Oh my God. That's when I made the decision I was going to take my inner work seriously more than ever. I saw what had happened. I got incredible movement, but then I got impatient and I started meddling in the middle again instead of staying in the end. So I made a deal with myself. I was only going to focus on the end. I spent my time really loving myself. I forgave him. I forgave myself. I was doing things for myself and I was trusting in the best version of him and focusing on the love we had between us. He still reached out to me. And there were many times when I almost fell for the 3D illusions. Then one day he called and said, "I love you. And I know this is going to hurt you, but I am moving in with her. We won't be able to talk as much, and I'm sorry. I know this is going to be hard on you. Please understand, I do love you." In that moment, she said, I had a choice. I could fall back into the same pattern of middling again, or I could stay in the end, trusting that this was a bridge and that being with her was going to show him all the more what we have. I imagined our communication increasing, even though it waned off completely. Out of nowhere, he called me again and he told me he couldn't stop thinking about me. And this was after he moved in with a third party. He was dreaming about me, hearing my voice in his head. He said everything reminded him of me, and he couldn't stand being near her anymore. He ended it and told me he was coming home. This journey has been a huge lesson for me, and I finally see where I kept getting caught up. But now I trust completely in what I know to be true. Thank you so much for all of your guidance, Kim. I just wanted to share this progress with you. I love you. And I love you too. So thank you for sharing that with me. There were a number of circumstances here, right? There were multiple separations. There was a third party that ended up happening because she was fearful that that was going to happen. So it's okay. It doesn't happen the same with everybody, but she could at least say, this is what I was worried about. So then, yes, this is what she ended up experiencing. There was the whole story about long distance now of him moving away. And she also was able to step back and see when she didn't control herself and she allowed the 3D to dictate to her what was happening. In other words, she's falling for the illusion. Then things in the 3D got worse. And then when she just dropped all that and let it go and then persisted again and focused and was disciplined with herself and how she thought about herself and him. And when the communication waned off, when he was actually moving in with the third party, this is where a lot of people would have really kind of went off the rails pretty much. Instead, she just stayed in her trust, in her heart and soul, in the best version of him, the best version of herself, in the end of being together. And she went right into communication, beautiful communication. So even though in the 3D, the communication stopped, it didn't stop for her. She continued to communicate. And it was dominantly because I always tell my clients and you guys to dominantly have the communication from the end of being together, not the middle stuff. Because then people get caught up in the middle. They get caught up in the 3D circumstances, and then they lose faith and they lose hope and they get frustrated. Okay. So anyway, please do comment down below that you know that you are the operant power and your circumstances don't matter and your end exists. And I love you so much. I hope that this video helped. Reach out to me if you need me, and I'll talk to you soon. I love you. Bye.
Nothing can come, nothing can come, nothing can come between us.